So when I finally did make it out of the bowels of Saskatchewan in 1993, 2 days after I wrote my departmentals, I took off to Victoria, BC. And I spent my career, well, in restaurants. I didn't know what else to do. What are we going to do? I got a job at McDonald's. Boom. 2 years later, I was working the morning shift there the whole time. I had a great crew. And they were like, well, we'd like to offer you a supervisor position. However, we don't think you should stay with the company anymore. We believe you are meant for bigger and better things. And they had a connection set up for me at the Ocean Point Resort Hotel and Spa. So it was like, okay, so I figured may as well do that. So I got into hotels and then I found out all about banquets. And then I had a side job that was also into catering. So my career pretty much just bounced from there. And there was one hotel that I was dying to get my foot into, and that was the CP Empress Hotel. And in that time, I probably applied 60 times, no fucking lie, probably 60 times. And then one day I got a phone call, and Jesus Christ, they're like, we have three positions opening. It's three positions open, and we're 20. There's 20 that the 20 of you are going to be um have that interview. I was like, okay, so I went for the interview, and the guy that hired me, he's like, you know what? The biggest thing on your resume for me, he says, McDonald's. He said, I always like to hire people because that they give the best training. Back in the 90s, they did. Nowadays, nobody that I hate nobody knows how to work nowadays. Nobody's trained to even say hello when you go up to the till. So I got my foot into the door there, and it was a prestige hotel. Like, you went in, you didn't take, you picked up your uniform that was dry cleaned for you. It was tucks and tails, and there was fine dining. You had to wear white gloves on occasions. And we also had we had, like, the biggest room that we had in the actual hotel was the dining room. The crystal ballroom held 320 people comfortably. You could push it a little bit more, but it was always more of a bitch on the servers than anybody else because it's so hard to get around the tables. And then we also had the auditorium. So then that broke down into three different rooms because the walls would slide. Or we had a 6,000 stand up. And that's a lot of people when you're doing a stand up for like wine testing or this and that. We had a Comic Con show there one time too. However, the one thing that I wanted to pick on mostly, or not pick on mostly, this was all about like the first. So I'd been there for 2 years, and we found out that the queen was coming, and she'd already been there before. There was her china upstairs, so everybody had to start bringing down china. Oh my God, it was a big procession. It was a lot of freaking work. It was definitely no fun from the time that we heard that she was coming to the time we found out who was serving. Because banquets, we had so many people in the hotel because we also had Kipling's. We had another outlet for like fine dining. Then there's a tea room. Some of these people had worked there like 50 years, well, not 50, but like, 40 years, so they wanted to be the ones to serve at this function. It's the queen, like, for God's sake. So I didn't get picked. I could care less. And then Ruth is all like, Amber, I'll pay you to take my shift. I was like, no, you don't have to pay me. I said, it's interesting. I always like to see the way certain things run. And she's like, this is going to be a shit show. She said, I promise you right now. So that's why I don't want no part of it. She said, just make sure you smoke a lot of weed before you go. So I go to work, and nothing set anything off. And I had like all my pins on, like my Fairmont pin. I always keep these on because you always have them on your coat. Because, I mean, I worked really hard for these pins. So I walked in and there was no problem. Then I went into the locker room and grabbed all my pens and papers. Wasn't quite sure you'd need, but the one thing you always grab is your corkscrew. So grabbed my corkscrew, went through the next set of um, alarms to go into the ballroom, and it set off. And the guy asked what I had on me, and it was my corkscrew that set it off. And I had to do one of those training days where you had to see how much you could carry, how quickly you could serve tables, how fast you could clean up tables, how much weight you could carry off tables. It was like a whole day of like just fun and like winning. It was a game. It was like, who could do this? Here's your treat, or who did, So I won a $5,000 Empress corkscrew, Fairmont Empress, white, pearl white. It was like, oh, it was the fanciest thing. Like everybody wanted to come use the pretty corkscrew, and so this bastard's all like, well, you're not allowed to have this corkscrew because it's considered harmful or something. That bullshit word, and he was like one of those 007 guys that had, that black earpiece and everything, holding a fucking dog, and I'm like, puppy, and I'm like, oh, when can I come pick it up? And he's like, oh, this is confiscated. And then I was early 20s and I never really cared about lip, I've never gotten in trouble for being an asshole or saying smart ass remarks, and this is the first time I actually probably could have got into a lot of trouble because when he took it away from me, I got mad and I was like, you know what? If I really wanted to kill her, I'd just grab the fork off the table and stab her in the neck. Like, what's the big deal? Why can't I have it back? And oh, then all of a sudden my supervisor had to come out there and he had to calm some stuff down. And he's like, well, she's joking, she wants her corkscrew. It's like her love of her life, her. She's like 23 with, balls of steel, So Dennis calmed down the situation, but I wasn't even serving the queen. Like she was 3 tables away, but it was really funny because every time I come in the room, I felt like I had like all six of those, Secret Service guys staring at me like, ooh, is she gonna run for the queen or something? Like, it's not gonna happen. But it was the weirdest function ever because, yeah, we had to wear gloves, and anybody that's ever served or anybody that lived, if you have serving gloves and you're touching plates that are going to have grease on the side or something like that, sooner or later is going to get on to that one side of your thumb or on the inside of your palm of your hand. So usually by your first service at a table, your hands are already fucking dirty. So your next set already looks like shit. You're switching out only 2 or 3 maybe per meal. It is just a joke. When the queen gets her meal and eats and has done her meal, you clear the room regardless or not you're done serving or not. You are coming back with plates that are like half full because they didn't have time to finish. Well, she eats quick and she's the first one served. So when you're the 320th person to like, and there's still only tables of, it was tables of 8 and there's 2 of us per table, or no, 4 teams, well, 4 people could carry 2 plates. There was your table of 8. So like, I mean, it was a slow service. Like it's not like you're hand bombing like 8 tables. I could have done like 6 tables all at once, kind of thing. So then at the end of the service, everything was over and well, not fine and dandy. Everybody's pissed off because they're all hungry. They didn't actually eat anything. But at the end of the service, the queen, well, we all had to do a recession. It's just politeness, that. So we circled out on the way out of the ballroom, and she did her, walk by and nodded to like 3 people out of the, I don't know how many of us were there because like chefs and everything are out there too. But Sir Philip went to every single goddamn person and shook their hand. Yep, yep, yep. Thank you for your service. It was great food. Thank you. Like, kind of made it up. Well, kept changing it and not saying the same bloody thing all the time, So, like, that was by far the biggest thing that I've ever endured in my life. I still have my letter, and yeah, it was by far the like, I mean, I've seen a lot. We've had like a lot of fundraisers there from David Foster holding stuff there, and we've Pamela Anderson. I don't know how many times I've met her because she come for so many different fundraiser stuff there. Plus, she's from the island, so she come back to do a lot of stuff in Victoria too. So I've met her outside of that, and you know, yeah, it was by far the best job I ever left in my life or had in my life. And yeah, I left for a guy, so. I left BC because of a guy named James that hauled me all the way back to Saskatchewan. So, you know, yeah. So yeah, am now back here. So am I, and I'm doing everything in my power to move. So now I'm moving, and that's the big thing. Is the next big move is I don't feel like going back to BC. We're gonna go forward this time. I'm gonna go UK or so. We'll figure something out. I don't really know where I'm going yet. Really don't care. It's all where who I'm trying to be around, and what organizations I want to get into and stuff like that. So anyway, I just wanted to have little chat about actually having a like a really good job, and then this other thing that I found one day was this little book from Indian Head. But when just before I moved here, I don't know how well you can see this, but it's a picture in an actual like Indian Head book that tells you all about the history of the hotel of the town, and this is the little shop that I owned. Yeah, with Justine. So I had my own restaurant. Well, it was an ice cream vegan restaurant. So because it was set up with the stuff in it, we couldn't lease it without taking on all the ice cream that was there. So and then we were just like, oh, let's make it into a little cafe while we're at it. So that was the first time I actually owned my own little place and could say that I made, decisions on all the food on the wall and all the painting and all that was a blast. So yeah, I've had quite a couple experiences. But that Queen one was definitely not a lot of people that can say they serve the Queen. And by far that is, like, and I served a lot of people, but by far, yeah, hands down, I have to say the Queen goes to almost the top of the charts because it's a freaking queen, and the Prince Philip. I mean, he's already like deceased, so light a candle for him. So anyway, that was my chit chat about the Empress Hotel and serving the Queen, and losing my goddamn corkscrew. Fuck, if I could get that back, goddamn it. I was pissed that night. Oh, and I went home crying. I had a roommate at the time. He was like, "Oh, jeez, bring out the beer." Yeah, and I made up for it. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk to you about that tonight. Just, having had a proper job and, you know, enjoying so much. That was the best job I've had in my entire life. There's so many stories to tell from there, I tell you. But that's it for tonight. So I gotta go do some reading and get some stuff done around here. So you guys have a good night. We hope to talk to you soon.